like traffic's bad, and I'm like,
Is it
this
time
is
to
like,
start?
Yep.
turn around. It was
Please.
like,
Yeah, it's like freaking out. you know?
Mistake.
You got a copy of the agenda, so we know what we're going in here? 'Cause I don't have, I have the other stuff, but I don't
Go
have the
ahead.
agenda. It's okay. As long as somebody's keeping track,
I do.
Thank you.
I'm going to share with
I
Dora.
got one. I got one.
There's an
He
extra
gave
set
me
of
Russ,
stuff
so-
here right over here.
Russ gave me one, so.
I'll grab
Thank
one.
you, Joe. All right.
I'm good.
You're good? Oh, you have one.
Sure.
Okay.
I do now. Thank you, sir.
So good evening, everybody. It's the 31st of the month. Just a minute or so after 6 o'clock, we have a quorum, and this is the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust. Welcome, everybody that's here. So a few agenda items. The first is to review, comment, and approve the minutes of the January 3rd meeting. I had a chance to read through them yesterday, and they look to be on the mark. Comments, anybody?
yeah, motion to approve.
And may I have a second?
Sec.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. The next item, line item number 2, is discussion of amending the town bylaw creating the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust. So we've had a little bit of discussion about what we were going to do in terms of Joe's position here on the trust.
Yep.
Not specific to Joe, but to the position of town manager. And we've got some language that Donna Brewer has actually had a chance to look at. And the changes that we were looking for, I think we are in good shape. Has anybody had a chance?
I thought she did a great job sort of putting some simple concepts and modifying it.
Yeah.
So I think we're good to go.
Yeah, you may want to just read the changes into, so they show up in next week's minutes as well.
Sure.
Vote to enter them into the minutes?
Well, we could?
Motion to enter the bylaw change into the minutes.
May I have a second on that one?
Second?
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain, so that'll be 3 in favor, none against, and 1 abstention. Just because it affects me, so I don't think it's proper for me to vote on it.
So, big picture, it's town manager is no longer, it's a 5-person board, quorum of 3 instead of 4. Town manager has representation but non-voting on the board.
That's spot on, Mark.
And there was one other change.
The
Residency.
will be required.
For all members.
So town manager position doesn't
At
have
all-
to be
At all times,
at all times, yeah.
not just when you
Right.
get on the board.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that, Mark. So next item is some discussion about the Gordon Conwell Task Force status update.
So, on that, so what would be the next steps? We would recommend that go to the Board of Selectmen for their approval in the next warrant, or,
Is it
how
a
do we?
public vote, or is it just a town meeting?
It's town meeting.
Town meeting, but the selectmen create the warrant. I mean, it's very early for the April town.
It doesn't
Not really, not that early. We're going to be, given when we have to print the warrant so many days before and deliver it so many days before the town meeting, all that time means we're going to have to finalize the warrant. I'm looking to finalize the warrant by the end of February. So
So let's get it to the
really have a lot
selectmen.
of time. Let's get it to the selectmen, get them to consider adding it to the warrant. They opened the warrant at the last meeting, so.
So should we vote to approve these changes so that the selectmen have the benefit of both the amended changes from Donna and our position?
Sure.
So let me ask, so we've got it together on our end of things. Then it needs to go to the Board of Selectmen so they weigh in on these changes?
So they can determine to put it on the warrant. The
Yeah,
Board of
or come
Selectmen-
back to us and say we don't like them or something, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, yeah.
I don't want to speak for the board. Obviously, they But, you know, they're unlikely to tell another body, duly appointed body, that they don't want to.
Well, they could.
They could,
It's
but
entirely in their authority to say,
They
we
could.
don't
I
want to
don't-
put this
I don't
on,
think they're likely to do
or
it, but-
please make these changes, or we'll have a public hearing because this point of view isn't being represented.
Gotcha.
I mean, there's time to have those meetings and make changes, because this isn't that complicated. Someone might have a very legitimate point, they say, we didn't think of X. You know, and so we consider it. So there's time between now and when it goes to town meeting to do it.
So shall we vote to move this along? I don't,
Yeah, so, yeah, I think
so.
we should definitely, I mean, you got the lingo, but we're going to give it to the
board and ask them
To
to
the
put it on the
board, so
to
warrant.
the
they can put it on
BOS
the warrant.
and ask them to review it?
Well, just ask them to try to put it forward and make it
So-
official.
Tell them that I'd suggest that you take a vote to ask the Board of Selectmen to put this item onto the warrant for the annual town meeting for an amendment to the bylaw creating this.
And that we approve of this language.
Or recommend.
Support,
We-
recommend this
yeah.
language.
So I would ask that we come forward to the Board of Selectmen with our recommended changes to the composition of the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust and move this forward towards town meeting in April,
April 6th.
April 6th. And could I get a,
It's much easier, April 7th.
And perhaps that we approve of this language.
we would ask them to approve the language.
So I would think they would want to know that we approve of this language. So I would think when they look at it, they say, hey, what do you guys think about it? We say, we're on board. They then look at it with their own lens.
So we would ask them to approve what we have approved, which is this particular language with the changes of the composition to the Affordable Housing Trust.
That's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems overly complicated. We could just say we recommend that they accept these changes and submit them to the town meeting for approval.
Perfect. I'll second that, if that was in the form of a motion.
That was a good
Sounds like
motion.
it was.
Thank you very much. And we've got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mark. Let's see, line item number 3, some discussion on an update on the Gordon Conwell Task Force status. Mr. Smith is here. David, good evening.
It's this whole thing. All right. Thank you, Ross. David Smith, 27 Home Street, Chairman, Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary Task Force. I'm going to shock all of you by making a one-sentence statement request. Speaking for the Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary Task Force, we would like to request that the Affordable Housing Trust seek qualifications from the 3 experts recommended by Laura Schufelt of Mass Housing, and select one to serve as an expert consultant to the Affordable Housing Trust and the task force in helping us determine the legal feasibility of achieving 40B housing credits from an apartment building at the seminary.
And to be,
Questions?
well, to be perfectly honest, while I gave you information that David gave me on his notes from Laura, as well as the RFQ for the Affordable Housing Trust, I did not give you the names that Laura actually recommended. And
Could you read those to us now?
I can just tell you who they are. They're Paul Haverty, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty LLC. They're out of Concord. The other one, the next one is Steve Nolan, and he's with Nolan Sheehan Patton LLP. They're out of Boston. And then the other one was Daniel Rosen, and they're with Klein Hornig LLP. And I don't have an address, I just have an email. So I'm not quite
They're
sure.
they're a law firm. I can get you the address. I've worked with them in the past. Very good law firm. They do a lot of work in the housing space.
And these are all attorneys, or Haverty was a consultant?
These are all attorneys. You were given a name of somebody at the last meeting,
Yeah.
and she did not recommend him and mentioned that he was not an attorney, and that he hasn't been working with a lot of this recently.
Okay.
So these were the ones that she recommended.
Well, must not have known him, because he's very much an attorney.
Say that
The
again?
name I gave last time is absolutely an attorney. Oh,
Um,
no, there was another name that
There was another
mentioned.
name. It wasn't one that you gave me.
Yeah, so the guy I gave you was definitely an attorney who's more than capable.
Yeah, who,
Do you
I
wanna
can
give us that
check
name
on,
again?
I can
gave-
call Laura back.
Sent it to you,
You
right?
did.
So-
I didn't do anything with it, but you did send it to me, which is pretty nice
Okay,
of
if you
you.
can tell me, I can look into him. I mean, you can have 4 names.
Yeah, there's no reason we
Yeah,
can't see.
let's look at all 4 of them.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that's probably better.
Who was the 4th person? Do you have his name?
Chris Chappell, was it?
I got it here. Let's continue on while I
Okay.
take a look at this. So the 3 names that came forward from Mass Housing are Mass Housing connected land use attorneys that have a wealth of experience, I hope, with dealing with specifically 40B.
Right. And Russ, the purpose of that draft RFQ that I developed, which needs more work, was to solicit from them the qualifications that they had specific to our needs, our situation. Which is kind of unique.
To say the least. So,
So do we know where the seminary, sorry, is this,
fire away, please.
do we know where the seminary is in this conversation? Do they know we're having this discussion? Do they know what we're looking at?
Mark, I sense the answer is probably yes, but we haven't really explicitly confronted them with our interest in this yet, partly because we're still waiting for them to nominate candidates for the role of counterparts to
Sure.
our task
Fair enough.
force to work with them. I think that that's imminent, and it's going to, it's going to happen soon. We have to be patient with them, I think. But once we have, we've gotten our first meeting with our counterparts at the seminary, we're going to pose that question. And here's the reason why. We've thought about this from several different angles. I had originally thought that the best approach would be try to get an answer to that question as best we could. Is it legally feasible? And if yes, let's develop a little package to present them with the rationale for the legal feasibility, and then perhaps some kind of a concept proposal by which we could make this happen, and then let them chew on it. I think there's been some very valid feedback on that proposition to the effect that rather than go all that distance before we seek their, before we determine whether they're even interested or not, let's look at the legal feasibility first. I think that's the first critical hurdle. And if we get a verdict that, yeah, it seems to be legally feasible, we should then approach them about it without expending a lot more time and effort on our part to develop a concept proposal, for example. And so that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Do you think their input as to whether or not this is something that they'd even like to do should come before we even start spending money on a consultant? I mean, we could say, hey, look, we're looking at exploring something. Do you want to work together? And if so, we will hire a consultant to help us figure out the logistics.
Mark, that's a judgment call, and I'm completely open to the best opinions on the subject. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
There's no opinion I have that can ever be qualified as best.
If legally it's a non-starter,
Then there's
then
nothing to
we
talk
abandon
about.
ship. If legally it seems that it's feasible, I think at that point we certainly should approach them.
Yeah.
And not go any farther before we approach them as soon as we get that determination. Should we approach them before we even know the legal feasibility? It's a judgment call, perhaps. Everyone I've spoken with about this has enumerated a lot, the kinds of hurdles that we would face in making this happen, and the hurdles are numerous and formidable.
So you referenced them very nicely in your memo, and it's almost for that reason you'd like to say, hey guys, will you partner with us on this path? We'll be doing that part of it, but you almost, because it's so complicated, the last thing you need is another piece where they're really against it.
Yeah, and we would have to partner with them. We just simply can't do this unilaterally.
Yeah, so
No.
I think it's a, baby steps forward kind of thing. So we figure out who we might want to use. We maybe have a preliminary meeting with them where they would say to us, there's no way you could ever do this, or it's possible.
Yeah.
Then we have a quick preliminary discussion to see if the seminary wants to go forward. And at that point, we dig deeper and come up with a more concrete proposal.
Yeah.
So do you put a dollar amount on, how much you'll spend on legal services before you would even go to?
Well, we're not going to spend 10 grand. We're going to spend, we're going to have a preliminary meeting to see if we want to, if it's possible.
The answer to your question, Mark, is absolutely yes. I would say certainly less than 10 grand. That is, there's legal implications attached to that limit. We have to stay under that, I think.
I mean, I know it's complex and nothing is going to be easy about anything there, and it's worth looking at. But, I mean, I think the response that person from Mass Housing was, it's unlikely to be successful. It's like, oh, that was disheartening at the bottom.
She didn't say no. It's absolutely out of the question. She simply.
Never say no at this stage.
I know.
So I got it. I mean, I think you've articulated what the complexity is.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of getting, identifying people in the RFP and asking them for, what do you think? I'm in favor of having a meeting or two.
Right, I agree.
And then,
I think that's reasonable. If we can ask these four folks for a quick RFQ, just can you give us your qualifications on some of those things that David enumerated in his memo? We could ask Dor to do that. If those who respond, ask them if they're willing to come in and meet with us real quick. And we can get, for not a lot of money, in pretty short order, a sense from them whether or not this is worth going down the road or not. And if they
And
say,
I
hey,
think
it's worth going
we
down
have-
the road, I think the next question is, would Gordon Conwell even
Yeah, if they're gonna buy
entertain
in.
this?
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't want to go all the way towards spending $10,000 and then have Gordon Conwell say, no.
Yeah.
And so.
well, there's also the possibility that they could be indignant that we're down here. So you don't want to, I mean, we've seen in some of our early times when we're talking about certain properties, like, how can you talk about developing my property?
No, well, so, and to that end, I've kept a good line of communication open with the finance director at the college. I've had lunch and coffee with him a couple times. I've told him, we're expanding, we're investing in a lot of different things to talk to you when you have your subcommittee ready to talk to our subcommittee.
that's
And
great.
none of this is, we want to do this. We are just investigating what are possibilities so that when we sit down and talk to you, we know what's possible.
That's great.
And he's aware of that, and I don't think that they'd be indignant about that at all.
Okay, that'd be great. That's great.
Just to add to what Joe said.
Could you, Dave, sorry.
I think one of the points that hasn't been brought out until Joe just mentioned it is that we got a lot of eggs in the basket, ideas of how we might be able to work with the seminary to benefit the town. We haven't rolled anything out. We're hesitant to roll anything out until we get a sense of, well, first of all, we don't want to muddy the waters with something that's legally unfeasible. Let's figure out which ones are feasible and prioritize them, and then we'll approach them and have a discussion about the things that make sense. And if this doesn't make sense legally, we don't want to waste the can of fodder.
Sure, sounds good.
So I think that's the way we should move forward. We should decide, we'll have 4. I'll give you that name when we're done. I have it
Okay.
here somewhere. And then we can,
And I'll send them
Figure it
out
out.
this, whatever scope of work type document.
and I think to get our arms
get 'em to
around
respond.
the legal issue up front, is it in fact anything that can be discussed further, I think is critical. And it may be dead in the water or it may not, but the time to find out is before you spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I wouldn't spend more than $2,000.
I wouldn't either, not up front, no.
And
So
unless
like
you,
a 2-hour meeting or something is probably all you really need, with someone who's really qualified.
yeah, because you're going to have to, for them to come to that decision or recommendation, they're going to have to spend a little bit of time to understand the nuances of the campus, the physical structure of the
Because I
campus.
think they're looking at basic stuff. Religious institution, on a school campus, 2 big red flags, right? And then they're going to look at, some of the guidelines and things that have been going on in the past. I mean, so I've seen like tax exempt, tax credit deals, like, low and mod income tax credit, federal deals done on both of those, like schools and religious institutions. And, in theory, they shouldn't be associated with those kinds of things. But I think if they're not-for-profit and this is a housing development and it isn't, uniquely servicing their community, and it's open to the public and it follows all the, you can do it. It's rare. So,
Then you have to fold in the fact that the existing buildings are not subdivided from the larger parcel. And there's, who comes up with the capital, there's funding, the infrastructure, they have a common septic
It would
system.
probably have to be by building, not by like this room or that room,
Right. So my point is, it's, it gets complex beyond just the religious view. I mean, it's part of a campus. It's part of a campus. It's one property, right? So if we're all working in the same direction, if they're working in the same direction as the town, we should be able to figure it out if it's legal.
In my conversations with Laura Schufelt, she said that she thought that it was best for it to be subdivided out as a separate parcel.
Well, so that's much more complicated than, I would think, than them leasing the land under one of the buildings or something.
Well,
Yeah.
that's most likely true, and that might wind up being the type of thing that would become a non-starter, because that changes how they're taxed.
Maybe. So they did express, they did
they are
willingly just subdivide the hill
A&R.
partial.
Right.
The 19-acre parcel on Bridge Street, which says that they are willing to consider something. So the concept is not, but a building is integral to what they do and their identity.
A building
So-
on the existing campus versus a piece of land that is adjacent to but not really useful as part of the campus are two different things. So they may view that as differently.
And my only point, bringing it up here, is I think this level of complexity has to be at least introduced to whatever attorney is giving us judgment,
Yeah.
so that they can factor it in
Yeah.
in some way.
And also, I think something that needs to be looked at, which could very well be quite important, is how was the campus permitted in the day long ago? I'm sure that needs to be looked at as well, I would guess.
Well, you're not going to be revisiting the special permit, right? So, yeah, because.
Maybe. I mean, I'm just saying.
That's a trickier thing, because that would involve the planning board and, that's,
Do you
Right.
want,
what happens?
do you want me to
So
put
when
like
do
a
you-
cost
Can I ask
limit?
a question on this? So, like, when do you think the task force from this, Gordon Conwell would be ready to? Because it's almost like they should be in the if we pick somebody and we're willing to pay them to give advice, then maybe everyone should be in the room, so that there's, it's not like we're going off on a tangent at that point.
That's the judgment call. That I'm not uniquely qualified to make that decision. I think it has to be our collective decision. Do we approach them first before we know whether it's even legally feasible or not? Or do we wait until we get a suitable expert to tell us, yes, it's feasible, or no, it's not? I don't know.
Yeah, well, so I'm getting the sense, though, that, whether or not it's feasible might depend in part on what they may or may not be willing to consider doing. And if we go too deep into the details without them even knowing about it, it's kind of weird, right?
All true.
All true. I think that, my most recent conversation with Jay Trewern up at the college said that, he expects, they're getting close to being able to pick some people to put on their counterpart working group with ours. And he was going to ask the president to kind of make that decision in the next couple weeks, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we got to tread lightly on that, right?
So how about, we can have conversations with the people that respond to the RFP, but if we're going to have a meeting, maybe we try to stage the meeting with someone from this board who might.
So it's not like us going down some road on our own.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
I just think the kiss of death here is if you get too far ahead of the seminary.
Yep. Good thought. Thank you.
Agreed.
So did we agree on a $2,000 limit until, is that?
I think that's what we talked about, so, you know,
$2,000 limit?
not to exceed $2,000.
Okay.
And we got to do a bit more legwork with these folks.
Well,
So
not
you
to
don't
exceed
need to make-
2,000 before we have the seminary on board. Because if we actually start working on a real transaction, it'll cost us more than that
Right.
to
So you don't
execute.
need to mention the $2,000 limit in the RFQ. That's just asking the four identified parties, you know, for their qualifications on this and their interest in doing this kind of work. Let's get their
Okay.
qualifications, make it qualifications-based. It's under 10, we're not going to go too far down that.
Okay.
Okay.
So just send it out the way it is.
Well, yeah, we'll touch it up, you know, David and I will work with you.
Okay.
But
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, David. The next line item number 4 on the agenda, is discussion of potential affordable housing developers here in Hamilton. So last meeting on the 3rd, we had Dave Calhoun for a visit with his
Right.
partner, whose name escapes me.
Berardi, I think it was
Chris Barati?
yeah, something like that.
The guy was here.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I had mentioned that I would contact some of the planners and some of the communities that he said he worked in, and I also asked him to send information about his firm to us. And I did send that out to you right after he sent it, and I contacted some of my former colleagues and friends who were working in the towns that he said he had projects in. I didn't find out as much as I would have liked. I contacted Watertown. They were very familiar with the project that he had put in for, that he gave us information about, but they were not familiar with him. They thought it was a great project, but his name never appeared within their files. They don't remember him, and
Did his
he-
partner's name?
No, they weren't familiar with his partner either. The only thing they could think of is that maybe he was part of one of the firms that actually did do work on it, but he was not somebody that they were familiar with. I also contacted Marshfield, and the planner there said that he was familiar with the last 3 projects that have occurred in Marshfield 40B projects that have occurred in Marshfield over the last 10 years, and he was not part of any of those projects. I did contact Weston because when I Googled his name, he comes up with the Weston project, and the information he gave us was from the Weston project, saying that he had worked on all these other projects. And there they were very familiar with him. He had proposed 150 units on 2 acres of land adjacent to the Cambridge Reservoir. They don't have a sewer, so he proposed having something called a industrial evaporation system.
Okay.
And they felt as if they weren't familiar enough with the system. They didn't know whether it would work, and so they denied the project, and they're in litigation with him. And I don't know enough about, like, an industrial evaporation system to know anything about it either. So it was basically going to be located in the basement, and I was under the impression that that this entire project was going to take up the entire site.
So the evaporation system was in the basement?
Was in the basement of the buildings where they were going to have the 150 units. I don't know, you might know more about this type of thing.
No, I mean, I thought, I'm visualizing like those municipal water treatment plants where they have this, you know, big ponding area or something, but in the basement's sort of flabbergasting.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite sure how this was going to work. They weren't sure how it was going to work, so they denied the project. So that was the only community that he had mentioned that was very familiar with him. And in that case, they said that he was the main lead person on the project, and that Mr. Berardi was the property owner.
Yeah, all right,
So that was the primary issue they were saying.
okay. Fortunately, that's not too good, right?
That sounds faint.
Yeah, it's disappointing, I think.
Good choice of wording.
Well, it's disappointing because it certainly sounded like he had all kinds of experience with 40Bs. And-
So in fact, that is exactly the disappointment. It's that he's representing an experience
Right.
that it's not clear that he has. I mean, it's one thing if
He
they
was the
don't.
lead person in the Weston project. That was actually.
Which is under litigation and not going forward.
Yes.
Well, it's under litigation, but it just means that somebody's challenged the 40B. That doesn't mean it's not going to go forward. It just has to work its way through.
And the town might be for it.
Well, if the
No,
town,
no,
if the town denied it.
The town denied
The
it.
town denied it. So it's not someone challenging it.
Well, I remember, I think, we should go back and look at the minutes. If I recall correctly, I thought he said that the Board of Selectmen denied it, denied the application, and were the ones actually fighting it. He claimed that it was because the Board of Selectmen were in favor of a different project on a nearby site that was not the one that they were proposing. But-
Well, so this is pretty specific about an industrial evaporation. That's pretty specific feedback,
Yeah.
rather than we preferred a different
Well,
project.
Yeah, they might not admit that, but
Yeah, I don't think the planner for the town of Weston would say, oh, the Board of Selectmen just didn't like the project. They're probably not going to say that.
Fair enough, fair enough.
They had to hang their hat on something.
But I thought he was implying that he had a friendly situation on a 40B there.
He had implied that the residents preferred his project to the other one.
There's a lot of, yeah, it's all fuzzy to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's presumably time for him to sort of say, no, our misunderstanding of those projects are misunderstandings. And, you know, he can, if he gives you his portfolio in a more complete way.
It might be fine, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so they mentioned Watertown, Framingham, Cohasset,
Yeah,
and they're presently involved in Quincy as well,
right.
according to our minutes.
Yeah, so certainly Framingham and Quincy would have sewer.
Cohasset would be a good town to talk to if we
Yeah.
wanted to go
I
any further
can
with that.
contact Cohasset. I don't know the person there, but I can still call
Could
him.
you try Quincy too?
And I can try Quincy
Quincy's
too.
a city. I mean, they definitely have sewer and stuff that's,
Yeah, and so the dynamics of a project like this change dramatically once you have sewer.
and Quincy has a
way.
lot of 8- and 10-story buildings and stuff, right? So that's-
I can still call just to see.
That's worth a call.
And I can call Framingham.
Newly a city, but I'm not sure what their system is on.
Framingham? Yeah. But they
There's sewer.
clearly
Well,
have
they
big,
must have water and sewer.
and they also have apartments, obviously, all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not, yeah, Cohasset's probably our best. Best similar.
All right.
What more do we have to report, or do we have to say about that group as a whole?
But we were hoping that they would come back with some concept of working with the HDC downtown, right? Because didn't they express, oh, yeah, we could do a 20-unit.
At Willow.
Doing something,
Yeah,
and,
but, I mean, that's held up for an RFP, right? So I don't know what and then I guess this other site's 2.5 acres. If they really have the capabilities they're talking about, that's a decent site for them.
Which site is
oh, the
2.5
one
acres?
that was in
Yeah,
today's memo?
we'll
Oh,
talk
that's
about
good.
another
The one that's
business.
not on the agenda.
Yes.
Well, it'd be other business, other business.
Yeah.
So, Dor, I guess reach out, have another
Yes, I'll have another round of
another go at
calls
those
and
communities
Contact them, yes.
and know what we know. At this point, should any of us have conversation with Dave, or no?
Well, maybe we could hold off to the next meeting, would you mind? I mean, I did email him
I'm not
thanking
sure
him
we should be
for
reaching out to
meeting.
them unless we're comfortable with who they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could call it, can we ask them for resumes?
Well, I did email him and thanked him for coming to the meeting, and then I asked him for more information on the projects. And that's when he sent the information from Weston, which talked about the other projects, and I
So the
think
list
I
you
sent that
got
out
did not
to you.
include Cohasset, but included Marshfield.
I don't remember whether it included Cohasset or not. I'll
But
take
it
a
did
look.
include Marshfield, which is not in our minutes, right?
It included Watertown. That was the one that mostly it was featuring.
Watertown.
Yeah.
But it's really weird. I mean, would you give a reference to someone who doesn't know you? You're looking for a job and you're,
Well, so, like you said, I mean, every time you hire someone, they may have been involved in some capacity with a lot of different projects.
yeah.
like as a manager for some other group, or as a
Right.
designer, or an engineer, or a builder, or subcontractor, or
Their
something.
names weren't on the Pell Grant or
Yeah,
Pell
yeah,
application or anything like that.
Fair
doesn't
enough,
mean that-
fair enough.
They did list a fairly extensive design and development team for the Watertown project. There was about 5 or 6 firms there, and
He threw
their
out some
names-
top-notch names when he was here, as people
Yeah.
he would hire.
A lot of them were part of the Weston project, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, to that extent, even though Quincy and Framingham are similar to Hamilton, just knowing whether he's actually worked there and they know of him, that might be helpful to us to kind of speak to what, whether or not we got a faint resume or, just one that didn't specify his role.
Yeah.
Seems a little bit more clarity before we do reach out.
Well,
Okay.
That'd be.
I would not reach out to him at this, unless we feel more comfortable with who they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check with the communities.
Yes, I'll
Okay,
do that.
that's great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other business, line item number 5. So, Patrick Reffert, our town planner, was reached out to by a resident here in town who has a parcel of land that he is interested in having the Affordable Housing Trust purchase this 2-acre property, 2.5 acres?
2.29 acres, yes.
This is new news and hot off the press, by the way, everybody. So, here we go.
So the address you have on there, 468, it's 436.
Oh, no wonder I couldn't find it.
Yeah, so 450 is Patton, so that 468 would put it somewhere like in the middle of Green Meadow Farm.
So the real number is, Mark? Sorry?
436.
436.
And the
as
property
previously-
location card that was on the email had the right address. It just, the memo slipped.
We did look up the property to some degree. Jim Hankin and I looked at it a little bit. His thought was that, and according to our GIS maps, it's adjacent to extensive wetlands. He thought the Conservation Commission would require a 70-foot setback, but it did not appear from the GIS maps anyway that it was itself wetland. The other thought was that it's within a Zone 2, and so therefore you would have a bedroom limit. I believe it's 1 bedroom for every 10,000 square feet of land area, which would limit it to about 10 bedrooms for the entire project.
So, I'm looking at the,
Yes.
so it, and then I looked at the assessment, and the assessment seemed odd to me that it had some rounding number like 30-something thousand square, well, I have it right here. But, and that was valued substantially, and then the rest of it, which was 1.5 acres or something, was valued at like $8,000. Right, so.
Yeah, so it was like 200
Yeah, so
200,000 and
I'm looking at this.
and
So
9,000 or
Is
something.
51 a separate lot, or is that the part that just happens to be clearly in the wetland?
51 is the entire lot. So I went to the town GIS. 51 is the entire lot.
So it's
It has
43,
two valuation
44,
components to it.
Yeah, so 43, 44, and 51.
Yeah, it looks like 43 and, well, certainly 44 shares what's more than a paper driveway. I mean, there actually is a driveway.
It said paper street in the memo,
Yeah,
which makes
so-
it something that the town controls?
Paper street may or may not give you frontage, depending on how it was applied. But those are the, if they use a 40B as a permitting technique,
All that goes away anyway.
From what I
Some of
understand,
that
the
goes away.
zoning is half-acre zoning. And so if you did put 3 houses out there, or you put even 4 houses out there, it would actually meet the zoning. So you wouldn't even have to go through 40B.
Can you include, for that zoning purpose, wetland?
so,
That's a good question.
So-
yeah,
I
mean,
can
I'm
find that out.
Yeah,
like
but-
FAR stuff, but it's something like that, right?
well, the FAR, yeah. So you probably wouldn't violate the FAR requirements because we're pretty generous in our impervious stuff. I think what's tricky is you wouldn't be able to say that's 3 lots because you wouldn't be able to have, we have a circle requirement, a frontage circle requirement, And you wouldn't get 3 lots that all have
Did a
frontage.
40B type thing, or you just
40
had the.
40B would avoid all the
Have a cluster.
lot-specific restrictions that are in our
Cluster, right?
bylaw.
You'd have a condominiumized lot or something
Yeah.
like that, right?
The other thing I did want to point out that I should have mentioned is that it's also adjacent to a cell tower.
Yeah, I'm not even familiar with a cell tower, but okay.
Do we have
That's
one
the
in
new
town?
cell tower that was
Phone
just
doesn't
put
work.
It's a new cell tower, yeah.
Nice one.
So if it's usable, the price is great. If it's not usable, it isn't. If it's accessible, the price is great. If it's not accessible, the price isn't.
Patrick and Jim both suggested that if you look into it, that a wetland delineation be done first, and so that maybe that would be part of the kind of purchase and sale agreement, to have a
Well,
wetlands delineated.
well, so if you were going to do a PNS, or you would probably want to do everything. You'd want to make sure it was buildable. You'd want to do perk tests and all that kind of stuff. You know,
Yeah.
whatever.
wanna
You'd
do
check
that-
the water table, see what you'd have to do for septic design. I mean, I guess there's a chunk of money, right?
Yeah, and, you know, if it is indeed a buildable lot, even for 3 or 4 units, you know, the price is good. So, but we're not going to be building that, right? So we're going to need a partner along the way. So,
So I'd like to do a drive-by, because I'm not familiar with where this is. Do you know this? Have you?
I have never walked back there. I've walked across lots of people's backyards in this town, but not there.
You want to go and do? You want to go and have a look at it, Mark?
I'd love to.
Anybody else want to have a look?
I'll come with you when you're going.
Now's a great time to do that.
Like tonight?
Yeah, not tonight.
So.
You could walk across the water and not know it.
I
Yeah,
mean, if
that's
you
right.
do do a site visit, do you want me to post it? As
We're not likely to have a
site
quorum.
visit?
Well, if the 3 of us go, we're getting close.
Quorum's 4.
What are we doing? We need a quorum to walk a site?
No.
No, you know.
But if a quorum goes to walk.
If we
Gotta
met
make
as
it
a
public.
board, if 4 of us met as a board and the topic was board business, then we should post it.
Right.
It's just open meeting law.
So if you want to go, I shouldn't go.
I don't care.
Or post it.
I don't know.
It's not a big deal to post it.
Yeah,
It's very easy.
that would be fine, yeah.
Could we look at a calendar?
I think we just post it and then it becomes a,
I don't think you want to post going onto some lot that we're not even sure we want, right?
well, presumably you wouldn't go until the owner says, yes, by all means, take a look.
Maybe we
Yeah.
can reach out to the fellow and say, listen, we'd like to have a look on Monday. Would that be okay?
If we were
Making
out
it
there
up,
with
I'm
snowshoes
just-
doing it by
whatever.
ourselves, but if we're
Yeah.
going as a group of people, yeah.
Well, Monday might be too quick because I couldn't post it for Monday.
Yeah, but if there's only going to be 3 of us, we don't need to post it.
You're right, but we would also have to reach out to the owner, I
Yeah.
would think.
Yeah, yeah. you
So
guys
I don't know if
it.
I can get a hold of him by Monday.
I mean, I'm not going to add any value walking a lot, so.
So I'm just looking at
German
weather.
snow on the ground.
So the weather on Monday is going to be moderate and 50.
Yeah.
That's a lot better.
All right. Dora, if you could call him tomorrow and see if it's okay.
Yeah, I'll
if we
call him.
traipse
Mike,
across
you
the back
around
of his
fifth- you around on
property
Monday?
on Monday.
Yeah, I am.
I'd
Do it in
prefer
the
Monday to
afternoon.
anything else before
So
then.
this guy does
Okay.
not live there, right?
He has a piece of property, his house, I believe, it fronts, is an adjacent parcel that fronts on Asbury Street. Probably 43.
Yeah.
I believe that's what Patrick told me yesterday.
So what's being offered is not 43,
No, it's 51.
It's 51.
The piece in yellow.
and 44 is not part of it either.
44 is where the cell tower is. So this home would have great cell phone reception, unlike most other homes in town.
It would be a feature.
Russ, yours is probably horrible, right?
My reception?
Yeah.
You know it.
So along the way, we should probably hit Salem deeds and understand the nature of that paper street. You know, what, just 'cause some paper streets are more equal than others. And, you know, they have all sorts of things that are written into them saying you can do this, you can't do that. So if there's something funky about that paper street, we should understand it.
So this is our town map?
Yeah, it's from
assessing
your
that.
GIS.
GIS assessing map.
Okay, so the wetland, so the whole lot is in the buffer zone of the wetland, is that what it's showing?
It is showing that, yes.
So that means it's not buildable.
No,
Well,
depends where the line is.
it depends where the line is, and the Conservation Commission thought that there would probably be a 70-foot setback.
So the layer,
Back from that,
From what?
from wherever the line is,
so the,
wherever the
So,
wetland is.
yeah, so I'm looking at this stuff that I think is saying it's clearly got standing water and wetland
Yeah.
vegetation. Then there's this shady green stuff, I'm not sure what that is.
so the way the maps are written and layered into the GIS for like the shady green is great for overall perspective of the town. It fails very often at property level.
So it could be off by hundreds of feet or 100 feet or something.
It could be off, so that's why you need to have, Dick or someone, someone to go out there and actually do a delineation.
And then you do a setback, and then, yeah.
Because, once you have that delineated line, you say, okay, nothing in 50 feet, nothing in 25 feet, so you have your 50-foot, your 25-foot, and your 100-foot setbacks. It's also going to be a riverway, so you're going to have a 200-foot, that whole part is,
Switch River.
so this goes into the Idlewild Brook. So the Ipswich River is just back there as well. So depending on where the state defines the river, you have distance setbacks as well. Not to mention 100-year and 200-year flood zones.
Is that the Ipswich River that goes up to Patton Ridge?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So Patton Ridge is high, so it actually benefits from.
It overlooks, for sure.
But here, if this is really high as well, then maybe,
Well, let's get a look.
Yeah.
Or if you could reach out to the fellow that's interested in
I will,
speaking with us, that'd be great. Daylight hours would be nice, early part of next week.
Okay.
In terms of,
Monday, Tuesday don't work for me.
Monday, Tuesday
I'm
don't.
working all day,
okay, so let me,
What's the long-range forecast look like?
yeah.
so. I'm good Monday, Thursday, or Friday.
I mean, Monday is good for you?
Yeah, Monday's good,
Okay.
Thursday and Friday are good.
Okay, so Tuesday, Wednesday are bad, okay, all right.
And the weather, yeah,
Sorry.
Monday looks good.
Okay,
2 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock, something like that, Mark, if possible. We'll just
you-
powwow
you
and
pick
figure it
something,
out.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be fine.
now, do you mind if he is not with you? If he doesn't mind you going on the property?
He
6 of
does-
one, half dozen of the other, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not a factor if he says he can't make it Monday, but you guys can go.
Yeah, if he says we can go, then we'll just go.
That'd be fine.
Okay,
Yeah, as long as he's not bothered by that. Yeah.
I mean, you
I
want to
don't
give.
wanna go on the property without him knowing about it, so.
Right.
Oh, yeah, we won't do that.
okay.
Okay, excellent. Any other business? Okay, doesn't sound like it. Shall we talk about a next meeting date, please?
Yeah.
Shall we shoot for the week of the 25th with a question mark? Which is about a month out.
Fine with that, unless you guys feel a need to meet earlier.
Would the 28th work?
For me.
I'm thinking we ought to push it out. We don't really seem to have a lot on our agenda right now.
We do not.
You guys still going?
Yeah, we're not quite done yet.
Almost done.
Oh, okay.
For a second, I thought you guys stopped and didn't let us know, so I was like really confused by the way you guys were acting. And moving, so I wanted to
you're
check
good.
in. I'm sorry.
But you're on camera now.
You're good.
You want to shoot for the first week of March then?
Yeah, sure.
So the first week of March is a week of the 4th, so that Thursday is the 7th.
That Thursday, I've reserved this room for the Historic District Commission.
Okay.
And they're planning on meeting that night. And then the next Thursday is the Community Preservation Committee.
How about the 6th, which is a Wednesday, with a question mark?
That's the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay?
What about Tuesday, the 5th?
I hesitate on Thursday. I think that's the Planning Board is that night.
13th?
Well,
12th,
if it's still a light agenda, planning board starts at 7 or 7:30?
Looks like they usually start at 7.
Could we be, 6 to 7?
If it's a light agenda, we could be.
I mean, we're about to finish up today.
We're pretty light.
Let's say tentatively the 5th at 7, and if something pops up that is
The
gonna need
5th
a
at 6
longer-
o'clock.
Yeah, sorry, 5th, 6,
Yeah.
sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
Sorry.
March 5th, 6 to 7?
5 at 6 to 7 PM. And then if for some reason the agenda seems to be filling out, we can always move the meeting date.
Or move the meeting location.
Or move the meeting location. We got a month to go
Okay.
before that.
Yeah. That works, everybody?
Yep.
Okay, great. So there it is. So,
The only other thing that I was hoping also you talk about is whether or not you want to continue to be filmed. You were talking about that at the beginning of the meeting.
well, as the agenda is extra light these days, and there isn't a whole lot of red-hot activity, in my view, maybe we should ease off a little bit. I know that there's a staffing issue with the folks that man the electronics over there.
Could I make a suggestion? That we consider kind of agreeing, I don't know if you need to do it by a vote, but agreeing that if we have a meeting agenda that's going to include a specific project proposal that's likely to generate, which in that case, we would likely generate interest, we should have those meetings televised. Absent that or a decision by the board to spend a significant sum of money, I don't see the reason to necessarily televise those meetings.
Okay.
It's a jumping off point for you
So
guys to
if we
discuss it.
propose spending more than $100,000 or discuss a specific project,
I'm fine. I mean, really, is there something that's going to be a major concern? We want to televise it.
Yeah.
If not, then,
maybe 50,000, I don't, 100 sounds like a lot, but I'm trying to pick a number that's not going to be.
Yeah, and I don't know that we can attach.
sizable spend.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's wise to attach a number to it. I think it's maybe that we think about.
If we're going to spend significant money, it would be on something, so.
Right, if that's gonna be on a project, that's gonna be on buying a piece of property or investing in somebody else's project, so that's gonna be something that's gonna
All right,
flag it anyway, so.
So I think that that's fair and reasonable.
That's fine by me.
motion?
So I would,
So moved. I get to make a motion.
that's excellent.
I might not get to make a
Second?
motion much longer, so I'll take advantage right now. After April 6th, I might not be allowed to make motions.
All those in favor?
Aye?
Yes.
All right.
Good suggestion. So I'd like to make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Please.
Mary Alice, that was motioned by Joe Domlovitz, seconded by.
Seconded by Bill.
Bill Mazes.
Can I have some wording on the motion? It's a little cryptic.
We're only going to televise meetings that involve a specific project.
I would say we'll try to televise.
I'm not,
Yeah.
start with the tries and the maybe.
Because sometimes,
Staffing issues.
Staffing issues, yeah.
Or we might not be in this
we
room.
will try to televise. Because, you hold it at the senior center, you can't televise it.
Right.
Right.
All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Really beat my time tonight, thank you.
All right, good.
You're
Good to help out.
clearly out by 8. Go home and cook. No, no, we're fine.
You guys set?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very
thank you.
much.
Feeling me step behind you, I don't want to hit you with the chair. No, I just,
Yeah, so if you.